couple of your takeaways from listening, right? Find listening a very interesting concept because it's actually a learned skill, and it's not like some God-given talent that some of us have better than others. So what are some of your takeaways from yesterday? Anybody? Or you guys all just practice listening to me? I need to listen better. Don't insert yourself into your client's narrative. David, you want to give people like to feel that you're interested? Wait till the other person is finished talking. Susie, definitely go watch the recording. Not all of us immediately responding with the solution. Donald, if you're married, that is a very good marriage tip too. So I want to continue the conversation, and David and I will speak about this together. Listening, allowing the other person to have the conversation on their terms. I do that frequently. So have you ever heard the statement, guys, that you listen so well that you solved my problem? Has anyone heard that? Just raise their hand. Right? If you're a good listener, you do hear that. Because there's a difference between someone asking you for advice versus I want to be heard, right? So if you think about prompting words, if I said, hey, Iris, I need your help with this, is she asking me for advice? Probably, right? Potentially. The second one is if I said, hey, David, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. Is that person asking for advice? No. Be honest, right? Listen, I think I will say, raise my hand, I'll be the most guilty culprit of all this. My nature as a human being is I want to help everyone. The problem is everyone does not want to be helped. So in my normal human life, when I go out, I catch myself all the time, be like, don't say anything. They did not ask for any of this. They're fine the way that they are. They're happy the way they are. When someone raises their hand and says something, that's great. Have you ever had somebody come give you unsolicited advice when you really weren't asking for it? It doesn't feel great, does it? Always ask open-ended questions. So I want to take listening now and talk about it in the sense of your pitch, right? Our theme this morning's Pitch and Compass. I want David, if you have anything you'd like to add before we continue.
Yeah, there's one point I think that's coming up in the comments and in what Chirag just mentioned here, and that's the importance of understanding what the nature of the need is when somebody comes to you with something. When somebody comes to you with something, they could be looking for any number of things. They might be looking for advice. They might be looking for a solution. They might be looking to vent. They might be looking for reassurance or validation that they made the right choice. You know, if they had to choose between a couple of different options and they come to you with something and they may be looking to just have some reassurance that they made the right choice in that situation because they're not so sure themselves. And so as a listener, it's crucial for you to try to understand what it is the person wants from you or what it is they're looking for at that moment in time. If somebody comes to you for validation and you give them a solution to their problem, you're not listening. And worse than that, they get a feeling of being not connected to because they came to you for one thing and you gave them something else. So if your normal MO is to be helpful to everybody, which is a wonderful thing, it may be that at certain times that's absolutely the worst thing to do. So when we talked yesterday about hearing behind the words, and that's what we're talking about here.
So how do you know the difference between validation and advice, David?
Well, sometimes they'll come right out and say it. They'll tell you a story and they'll say, do you think I did the right thing? In that case, they're looking for some kind of validation, probably, especially if you hear a hint that they're not sure whether they did it right, but they still feel pretty confident that they made the right choice for themselves. If they're looking for advice, very often they'll come out and say it. They'll say, well, what do you think I should do? Or what do you think is the best way to handle this? And if you're not sure between whether they want validation or they want advice or something else, you can use 5 magic words to help you find out. You know what they are? How can I help you? Write it down in a book somewhere, put it on your wall, 5 of the most powerful words you can have in your life to help you be clear about how you can give someone what they need. Because if you're going to create an extraordinary relationship with somebody, you have to consistently give them what they need, not necessarily what you think they need, which is sometimes off base.
So, that's really interesting that you say that, is that, understanding the difference, right? And the other one is hijacking. I share a really bad experience about myself, and I want to share with somebody else, and they say, "Oh my God, I had the same exact thing happen. It was so crazy," and everything like that. We're all hijackers, right? Like all of us.
Yeah,
That
we talked about that yesterday in terms of this idea of subjective listening, which is hearing the person's conversation or hearing their communication through the filter of what's important to you at that moment in time. And so if somebody comes up to you and they say, "Oh, I just got a brand new puppy," and you say, "Oh, I got a puppy 6 months ago and his name is Fifi and he's so cute and he jumps up on the sofa and he eats food out of my hand," exactly what Chirag is talking about. You steal the conversation. In a sales situation, it could be much more dangerous. Because if somebody comes to you, the example we used yesterday was, if somebody comes to you and says, "It's so frustrating to keep putting offers in and keep getting them rejected, keep losing out at the last minute." As a salesperson, as an agent, you might say, "Well, it's too bad we're in such a tough market right now." And that may sound like a decent response given the fact that it's true. But the person didn't come to you to have you repeat how tough the market is right now, right? They didn't come up to you and say, "Can you please remind me how tough the market is right now?" They're coming to you because they're frustrated. And if they're frustrated, that means they're probably worried about something. So instead of simply saying, "Yeah, it is frustrating and boy, it's a tough market," you could respond in a very different way, which is, "Tell me a little bit more about, what prompts that comment. Tell me a little bit more about what's on your mind about that." And the person might say, "Well, my wife is commuting an hour and a half to this new location and it takes her 2 times a day. She's got to do that. And until we get a new house there, we're never going to be able to reduce that stress on her. And I've got a son who's going to be in elementary school next week, as a kindergartner for the first time. And if we can't get a house in time for that kid to get to school on time and be there at the beginning of the year, all the other kids will make friends and he won't. And so he's going to be left out, in the friendship cold in a sense." And so by asking a little bit more information or sensing that there's something behind those words, suddenly you gain a whole lot of information from the client about what the world looks like from his point of view or her point of view. But more importantly, you're giving the client an experience of being related to on their terms. Because if somebody says to you, "I'm so frustrated that we keep putting in offers and we keep losing out," that's their terms, their frustration at what they're experiencing. But if you yank the conversation over to, "Well, let's think about the market," suddenly you've taken them out of their space and forced them into a more kind of dialectical conversation about the difficulties of the marketplace. And that's not what they came to you for.
So when you guys are talking about clients, right, and speaking with people, 2 things I want to touch upon. First is showing up in group discussions, right? And hijacking. It's a very relevant topic. So when you come into a group, you want to listen and you want to contribute, right? But if somebody's talking and somebody's sharing things, you have to remember in group settings, it's boom, 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 right? And we want to give space to other people. So one of the things I find it's really interesting, and our team members always chat me about this, is in one of the other sessions that we had done, we had told a group of people to say 3 things. And not one person just answered the 3 questions. And it's like, and we're sitting there, it's like, no one's really listening, right? And people added all this additional stuff. Hijacking in a group setting, when you guys are in office meetings and someone's presenting about something and you share a very personal situation, did the 100 other people in your office meeting ask about your experience, right? So listening is also really a way that you represent yourself because it's a way that you communicate with others. Now, when you go on an appointment with a client, just remember this. They, meaning the client, called you there for a reason. The more time you talk, the less they can actually share their reason. This is where I come up with the concept of being a trickless magician. It's not a magic trick, but these are learned skills that no one was ever taught, right? Think about this. Who here has moved recently? Anybody has bought a home or sold a home? Anybody? Hit yes in the chat box. Anybody? Interesting. Yeah, Cheryl. Sold your own home, not like somebody else's. Cheryl, I know you have.
Yes, I sold my own home.
Okay. So why, you know, how long did you live in your house?
23 years.
23 years. It's a long time. So,
A long
you
time.
know, what specifically motivated you to consider making a move at this time?
Kids were gone. I mean, kids had not gone, but moved out on their own, and not, a lot of space to take care of, a lot of upkeep, maintenance that we didn't need to do. So downsizing.
So you want to downsize. You don't want to keep up with all the space. So in a perfect world, if it's the end of the year, you're in your new home and everything went well, what would this ideal place look like, and why would you want to move there?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Yeah. If you mean, what would my ideal place? Could you ask the question again?
I'll dissect this for you. So she's going to say this is what motivated you to do this, right? So I need to really understand her why. Then the other part is, I was like, look, if it's a year from now and you're living in a home, what is that ideal home for you, and why is that home the right home? So now I could understand where they want to go and what's important to them about that type of place. I would dig a little deeper and everything else. Then I'd simply go to her and I would say, then, in doing this, what are your expectations of an agent that you partner with? And I would listen to her, right? You got to remember, if you don't have an anchor to hold on to or to tie something down to, the boat's going all over the place, right? So by understanding what motivated her, why she's doing it, where she wants to go, why she wants to do it, don't you think the rest of the experience is going to be a little bit different for her, not me? This is where you all say yes.
Yes.
Because in the end, when most people go on a listing, I'm not going to call it a presentation. I think a presentation is a horrible word. So let's kind of just get this out there. Industry standard, they call it a presentation. Do you know what a presentation is? It is a one-person monologue, right? So when you sit in a boring college lecture, that is a presentation, right? Like when we have our event in May, as a team, we're trying to sit there like, how many times, how often can we break people up, add value, have them talk to each other? So it's an interactive experience versus me just talking the whole time, right? So you have to realize you're going on a pitch. A pitch is like Shark Tank. It's a two-way dialogue. It's not a presentation. It is a pitch. Very big difference. If you just made that simple shift, it would change the way you show up. Because if you were pitching somebody, you'd have to ask them questions, right? Because then you'd want to know what you're pitching to. So number one, when you're going into somebody's house, the most important thing is to find out about them. Has anyone ever said to a client, I did this as an agent often, I'd be like, you know what, to be completely frank with you, depending on their personality, I'd say, Deanna, moving sucks. Like, who really wants to go through this process of packing up their stuff and dealing with movers and having strangers in their house and decluttering? Like, what made you want to do this right now? And people would give you an honest answer. Right? Like, I wouldn't do this to a high-end luxury client, but like maybe somebody that was like a little more laid back and blue collar, they'd be like, oh, thank God. Like, so you have to find out what made them show up there that day. David?
Yeah, so the way I usually say it is there's two things you really want to nail down for yourself. First is, what does the world look like from your client's point of view at that moment in time? Like maybe they're thinking that they've got all this upkeep and maintenance and they just don't want to spend the money on it or don't want to spend the time on it. That's what the world looks like for them. Or maybe they're bursting at the seams. They're in a small apartment. They need to move to a house because they just had the third baby. That's what is kind of prominent for them in their world. Second thing you need to understand is, what is their experience that they're carrying into the conversation at that time? Maybe they're scared. Maybe they're nervous. Maybe they're excited. Maybe they are in despair, especially in this market if they're trying to buy a house, right? It's very easy for them to carry in a certain experience, and you need to be able to connect with that. You need to understand what it is, connect with that, and meet them there, because that's where they are. And you, as a person who's in the market, as a professional, you know how tough the market is, and you've seen it 1,000 times before. So it may not have the same level of angst for you as it does for a client. But if you can't connect to that, if you can't like put yourself in their shoes, you're going to miss the opportunity to connect. And so what I always say is you need to stay connected to the client's experience. Always. It's the most important thing at any moment to create an extraordinary relationship over time.
So I'm going to ask all of us and put in the chat now, when you speak to people, what is the first thing you're going to do when someone says they want to list their house? Let's see if Lisa Reed nailed it. Try and understand it through their eyes, right? Listen, what I want you all to do is this. If you say, how can I help you? What's your motivation? Everything like that. This whole month is around purposeful communication, right? Now, say you showed up to coaching. I'd ask you a simple question. You know, what motivated you to consider investing in a coach at this time? And they would say that. And then I would say, as a result of that, what are you looking to happen and why? Right. So, you know, I would say to a seller today, be like, look, clearly have you watched the news, and what are your views on the housing market? Oh, it's great, it's high and everything else. So you're aware it's very busy, you're aware there's going to be a lot of traffic, you know, given all of those things, and none of us really enjoy the actual process of moving. What made this the right time for you to move or consider moving? See what they're thinking about, right? And then you say, okay, great, like I want to move, I want to downsize. All right, great. So what I hear you saying, calling back what they said is really important, right? You know, oftentimes in some of these meetings, you can share a lot of stuff with your client and you could stop. And this is more after they're your client, and say, hey, I just want to know, like, what did you hear when I said that? And oftentimes you hear what they say and you're like, what world are they in? Because it's very different than what you said. Repeat back. So what I hear is, Cheryl, you would like to downsize. You don't want to upkeep. You don't want to upkeep the space, right? And she says, yeah, totally, great. And you're going to say, look, in a perfect world, if it's Christmas and you're moved into your new home, where is that home located? What does it look like? And why do you want to be in that area? Right? Like, what's important to you about that home? Now when I need you to do stuff, I have something to connect back to. Say, hey, remember you wanted that house on the beach and everything else like that? And, you know, if making this decision could actually get you there, is that something you really want to do? Or do you really want to hold out for another $25,000? You know what? I actually do want to be on the beach. This is more money than we thought will go. As opposed to, well, you know, this is a really high offer and the market's really great and you really should take it because I don't think we're going to get. It's a whole different conversation. So Lisa, what we're saying is the Med C. Motivations, expectations, but you need to practice making this your own. So now that you've asked this question, I'm going to unmute you and you can ask me, put you on the spot.
Ask you what?
I'm moving. I'm going to be your client.
All right, Chirag, I don't know what to ask. Am I?
You just showed up. You just showed up to my house, right? You know, you said, hey, let's sit down and talk before we go through the tour. And now we're sitting at my kitchen table.
So are you aware of what's going on in the housing market? Have you been watching the news? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I've been watching. I know interest rates are going up. I know that there is a lot of interest and it's a very seller-friendly market.
And so given that, which is sometimes not always as fun when you're looking, what makes this the right time for you to look for a home?
You know, my daughter Valentina is very demanding. She has told me since she was 3 or 4 years old that there's not enough space in our house for all of her toys. So me being the sucker father that I am, I need to buy her a bigger home to get her a bigger room.
Oh, okay. So I hear that you're a family guy and you want more space for your family. And so that makes it a good time right now. And so is a larger home your highest priority, or is there anything else?
So I'm going to pause there right here, right? So you got me to tell you why I wanted it to like what I wanted, right? And this is like I'm sharing a real scenario. My daughter does tell me that she wants a bigger room and I should buy her a new home. And that what you would say to me is like, great. So I hear you want more space for your family and everything else. In a perfect world, right? In a perfect world, or if we're sitting here, it's Christmas and you're in your new home, describe to me in as much detail, like what does that home look like? Where is it located? And why is that the right home for you?
Okay.
This will also give you an idea of like where your clients are in a situation.
Okay.
Right? I don't know where I want to go, Lisa. I don't know. I just need more space. If I find the right house, I'll move. And then you see they're wishy-washy and you're like, oh, okay, right? But then I'm like, you know what? The ideal home for me has anywhere from 4 to 5 bedrooms. I'd like 5,000 square feet, anywhere from 1.5 acres to 2 acres of land. I don't want to be on a main road, or if I am, the house would have to be really set back. There'd have to be a lot of greenery in the front. Ideally, I would like an in-ground pool that connected to a jacuzzi. I like complete privacy. I don't want to be near anybody. I don't want to have neighbors. I don't want to have neighbors right on top of me. I have a 90-pound German Shepherd, so the dog needs a lot of yard space. Ideally, I'd like a great room or family room that has really high ceilings. We love watching movies, so we want to be able to build in sound and put a big TV there, and we'd like a fireplace, right? Like I would get into this, right? And then you could ask me why, and then I could tell you about all this. And at the end of this, how well do you know me, my family, and my goals?
Very well. And I think the step that I miss is you tell me all of that and I'm taking notes in business tracker or whatever, and I'm trying, but I don't ask why. So that is huge because you just get the background.
So it's not asking why, right? It's saying great, right? You're going to ask them, like, you're going to go through like, hey, tell me, like, based on what you've seen in the news, talking to friends, like, what is your view of the current housing market, right? So Brooke, we'll write this down, right? We'll just look at the time, 9 to 23 minutes into the call, 24 minutes into the call, we could put this recording together for them. I would say, thank you so much, Lisa, for having me in your home. I just want to start off by just asking you, kind of what are your views on the housing market from your personal view standpoint, what you've heard in the news, talking to friends. Then you're going to answer me, right? And you're going to say, given, your view on what's going on, look, the reality is I think both of us can agree that moving is really not fun. The process of packing up your stuff, having people in your home, there's a lot of people that are going to come through here. Like, what really made this the right time for you and made you want to think about doing this now? You're going to go through and tell me all your reasons. And I'm going to turn around and say, what I hear is most important to you, and or what I hear your goals are this, 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 and this. Did I miss anything, or did I hear everything you said correctly? I like that one really good, right, David? That's a good one.
Yeah.
Did I hear what you said correctly?
Sorry, what Chirag is talking about here is one of the things we mentioned yesterday. It's a skill we call paraphrasing. That's feeding back to the individual who's speaking what you heard, both the facts and the feelings, if the feelings are in there. If it's a feeling of frustration or confusion or anger or fear, whatever it might be that's coming up, like if they say, I'm so frustrated that I can't get a winning offer in this market, for example. And so Chirag is demonstrating one of those key skills called paraphrasing. Another one we talked about yesterday is open-ended questions that a couple of people threw into the chat earlier in the call. An open-ended question is a question that cannot be answered yes or no. And so it usually begins with what, where, when, why, and how. And any of those questions, and in this dialogue that Chirag just had a minute ago, there were a couple of closed-ended questions that might have been more useful if they were open-ended. The first closed-ended question was at the very beginning. She said, do you know what's happening in the market? She said, are you aware of what's happening in the market? I would change that. I would say, how aware are you of what's happening in the market? Because if you say, how are you aware of what's happening in the market? They say yes. You assume they know the whole market, but they may only know 50% of it or 60% of it or 35% of it. They think they know it, but they really don't. If you say, how well do you know what's going on in the market? They say, well, I know that the prices have gone up 3%. Well, actually, it's much more than 3%. Or I know that on average, houses are getting 2 offers for every seller. Well, actually, it's like 10 in our market, right? So you can find out a lot more about what they understand by asking the open-ended question. There was also another one later in the conversation when he said, my daughter wants a bigger room. So the question was, so are you looking for a bigger house? And that's another closed-ended question. You could ask that as an open-ended one, which is, so what are you looking for instead? Because if you say, are you looking for a bigger house? The person might just answer yes or no, and you don't get that much more information, possibly. Chirag was throwing out a lot there to demonstrate, but in many cases, you might not get much more. So if you shift that little question to an open-ended one, so what do you think you're looking for? You might get, well, I definitely want more room for my daughter, but I'm also thinking, you know what, as long as I'm upgrading, I might as well go for a pool. And you know what, I'm thinking that we got a 1/4 acre, and I think I need at least an acre because we're going to have, this dog. And suddenly you're getting a lot of information. So sometimes that open-ended question can make all the difference in your understanding about what the world looks like from their point of view.
David, you've had several offers from lovely ladies to move into their homes. So what I hear is most important to you two ladies. No, I'm not going there. So listen, the next part is the part after that, right? And this is where people get tripped up. Like, look, so I hear you want to do blank, blank, blank. And did I hear that all correctly? Yes, a perfect strike. This is exactly what I want to do. Great. So let's fast forward. It's Christmas this year. What type of house you're in? Where's the house located? And why is this the right home for you? Tell me more about what your goals are. And they'll just sit there and talk. And this is where you really want to dig deep, right? And then at the end of this is where the money shot is. Ready? You're going to say, okay, I would say, Lisa, so just bear with me here. I just want to repeat everything back the way that I heard it so I don't miss any important details. I want to repeat back to you what I heard to ensure I did not miss any important details. I'm going to say, so what it sounds like is that you're looking to buy a bigger home because you're a family person, and really your daughter has been pushing you for more space, and you'd like to help your family do that. And really where you want to move is blank, blank, blank. And this is what the house looks like with the yard and everything else. And the reason why you want to do it is blank, blank, blank. Did I hear everything in your goals correctly, or is there anything else additional you'd like to add? At that point, people are like, holy shit, because no one ever listens. And after that, this is how you build rapport in 5 minutes or less.
Wow.
This is why paraphrasing is so valuable, folks, because it's the only way for you to prove that you truly were listening. And if you were listening, chances are you got 95% of it right. And if you got that little 5% wrong, they'll correct you. They'll say, well, I wasn't looking for this, I'm looking more for that. But the point is, you're demonstrating to them that you heard them, that you understand what the world looks like from their point of view. And remember, no one will be influenced by you unless and until they feel connected to or related to by you. So whether you're trying to get a new client or whether you're trying to just, get a current client to love you, they have to have an experience of you relating to them before they will be influenced by you.
Mm-hmm. So everyone, that's what we have today. The first part in your pitch is building rapport. Right. I think we're going to go deep on this month. Like, this is what we were talking about for the entire month. And you could go all use this today. So love you all. I shall see you guys on Monday. And listen, go be a good listener. Go make a difference. Bye, everybody.